Bernie Sanders coming up with a sane foreign policy. Boy, that's unusual, huh? He was talking about, not that, rather than hearing about warplanes bombing and turning the Mideast into glass, uh, ra- rather than gibberish policies that we hear out of people like Carson and Trump and almost all of the Republican candidates, he says a couple of kind of wise things. He says, A, sometimes we don't need to be there. Second of all, if we're there, we don't need to do all the heavy lifting. Why, for example, are we fighting all of Saudi Arabia's wars? This is a country that beheaded 50 or 60 people last year. It's nothing more than a dictatorship. I mean, the living conditions for the average person there are horrendous where it comes to their freedoms. But we're propping them up, and we're fighting their wars, and we're spending the money. At the end of it, when you really analyze it, it's really about the defense industry. The weapons industry is willing to say, well, no, Saudi Arabia, you don't have to fight your own fights. We'll fight them for you by sending in drones and heat-seeking missiles, and we'll make a lot of money in the process. But he was wise, I think, in his assessment of this. Let's let them do their fighting.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the best routes that we could possibly go here is, look, we will help you when you need help, is what Bernie Sanders is saying. But this is happening in your neighborhood. This is your fight. These are your policies. You have to fight essentially for the soul of your religion. Are you going to let Islam be taken over by groups like ISIS? Or are you going to say this is not what we stand for? And I think that's a smart thing for Bernie Sanders to say. And hitting back on what you just said about Saudi Arabia, we have been, allies, I guess you'd say, with Saudi Arabia for so long that nobody bothers to look at how horrible the conditions really are, because when it comes down to it, the leadership in Saudi Arabia is no different than the leadership in Iran that we claim to hate so much. They're doing the same things.
Or Syria. I mean, Syria, it is a dictatorship that in part is financing all of the terrorism all over the globe. That's where the money always comes from, is some prince or some king or some billionaire in Saudi Arabia that's paying for this type of terrorism. And the wisdom in what Sanders says is say, look, this is your region of the world. You need to get it under control. We can help if it has to. We're not going to be just idly standing by as the threat increases. But you need to fly the airplanes. You need to put the boots on the ground. You need to go fight your wars. And why in the hell are we still continuing to fight Saudi Arabia's wars? Because at the heart of all of it, when you really drill down, it's all about Saudi Arabia.
It is. And one thing that I love about Bernie Sanders is that he is so committed to getting us off of fossil fuels that, we could bankrupt the Saudi royal family by suddenly saying, guess what? We don't need your oil. We've developed technology. We're going to start selling it around the world, and we don't need your oil. And we're going to do away with you. We're going to get rid of your oppressive and repressive policies, your repressive government. And let's take the Middle East back to what it was in the 50s, where women were allowed to go to college. They were allowed to read. I mean, that's what's so remarkable is that, 60 years ago, it wasn't like that. It was a very progressive part of the world. But Saudi Arabia has allowed it to do this.
It's the weapons industry. I mean, you remember in the oil industry, you remember it was just so revolting to me. It was almost as if I thought at one point that as Bush was holding the prince's hand that he might go over there and actually French kiss him. I mean, it was just so disgusting, this relationship that we have with these folks. And we need to reevaluate, and that's what Bernie's saying here. Weapons industry did not like that speech, by the way.